Okay, we'll call this land bank meeting to order, February 2nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. at Stafford County Annex. I don't know if there's any additions to the agenda, no citizens' comments, no consent agenda. No old business. We'll just go to new business because we need to appoint a president for the land bank.
Marshall's your current president.
I'm the current president.
I nominate Marshall. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. Okay. Carolyn's here. I guess we'll start with you first.
Okay, so I'm prepared to talk about whatever you want to hear. I didn't
Well,
know, I know I was requested to come, but I don't know exactly what you're looking for other than a general update.
We had the two properties that we had designated for you to build on.
Yeah.
Are those still a go?
Oh, yes. Please don't change anything. We have applied for funding. Maybe I should even kind of just give some, I don't know, general context, because I know I've probably been at different city council meetings, but maybe not all of those that are here have heard the progression of things. The house that we're building on 8th and Broadway is an opportunity we had in conjunction with Kansas State University. They have a College of Architecture program that focuses on affordable and energy efficient housing, and do a project, and I shouldn't say each year, I think it's a relatively new studio, but the one that they did before our house was in North Kansas City. And they were interested in doing another one, and when I proposed the idea of looking at a rural model, they were interested in doing that. And we were allowed to use grant funding that we'd already been awarded through Kansas Housing Resources Corp. So the down payment assistance program that we had in place for, I think it was 2016. So I think we had it for 4 years and available countywide, and only 2 houses were built with that. And so, I think they welcomed the opportunity of us finding a different way to use it, to have it used. So we were able to use that to match what K-State was contributing to this, to build that house. Where I feel like that has had its best value, though, is in that it's given us kind of a way to present something maybe under the auspices of having some innovation about it or something a little different, to be able to get additional grant funding. So we use that as kind of a prototype, and applied to Kansas Housing Resources Corporation under another program called the HOME program, and then subsequently to Federal Home Loan Bank for additional funding beyond that. So HOME approved us in May, and that's the one that I kind of considered the St. John and the Hudson houses. So the 3 that we have here in 2 lots, but we're looking at putting 2 houses on the lot of Monroe and First, and then a 3rd one on the South Broadway. We would go forward with that even without the other funding. But their process, they go through, it's federal funding at its root, so they go through a process of doing an environmental assessment. And just because we're awarded in May doesn't mean we're approved to construct in May. It wasn't until till December that they finished their environmental assessment. I don't have to do it on my end, but I know that they contact like 10 different pieces of investigation. Like the one that I always feel like is an easy one to kind of point out is like they have to contact native tribes in the state to ensure that we're not building on land of significance to indigenous peoples, for example. There's a fair amount of diligence that they go through, so that's why it's not something you just get to start building when you first find out that you've got funding. Federal Home Loan Bank also in December approved us for an additional $350,000. It goes with a $250,000 loan to build another 5 houses on top of that. So we'll have a county-wide program of 10 houses bundled all together. Now the challenge is getting a contractor to build. 1, to build it all, and then 2, to build at the price point that we established when we first started this project design, which was over a year ago, you know, and construction materials have gone up a lot. I'm looking how many contractors we have. Okay, so we started sending out bid documents to, in particular, our local county contractors in August. And I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 that were contacted in that period of time that either outright chose not to bid on it, they let us know they weren't interested, or they just didn't respond. I've reached out to a wider range of contractors outside the county, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, probably another 10 contractors beyond that. I have 2 right now that I think are going to give a bid. And we'll see how that goes, I guess. I'm braced for the idea that while we hoped that these could be built at 110,000-ish, that's not where the bids are going to come in. I mean, I will say, I did get one bid back in August at $225,000 per house, which is not going to work. I don't know if that was just a way of telling me that they just weren't interested in doing the house, but anyway, we have one contractor we're talking to right now that has done a fair amount of contracting for Kansas Housing Resources Corp., either directly or through customers like Housing Opportunities, Inc. And so I hope that means that they would also be very understanding of the kinds of specifications that they must meet in order to, you know, they're going to have, for example, they're going to need to be Energy Star 2000, or not Energy Star, IECC 2009. It's an energy standard. It needs to be compliant with that. They will be audited after they're built to make sure that they meet that standard. And we just need to have a contractor that does that.
With the grants that you've received, does it have to be a stick-built home?
It does not. We're giving them some flexibility. So the prototype is a panelized construction method, and I'm fully aware that that may not be the most practical thing for other contractors to do. We've said we want it to be the same floor plan, the same fundamental, design from that standard. But if they can simplify, I think one of the easy things to simplify on subsequent houses over what was built on 8th and Broadway is the foundation. If you drive by that, you might look at it and think it's on a stem wall, but it's not. It's a slab that's just built up really high. And I think that that would be one of the areas that could be modified in a practical way. We're very interested in value engineering it. It just needs to, for example, they have 3 bedrooms and 2 baths in them. It's a small house. It's not a tiny house. It's 1,150 square feet. So the bedrooms are not big. but it is 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And we got points on particular grant applications based on that. We can't veer from that. That's one, and they do need to meet energy standards. There are some core things that we can't vary from, but there's plenty that we could do if the contractor knows how to shave some costs or simplify it. Yeah. So, I think we're at a point that if we had the right contractor to build, we'd be able to move forward fairly quickly. I did submit this week an additional grant application to Sunderland Foundation. It's a private foundation in Kansas City that has its roots in the Ash Grove Cement Company. So they like to sponsor construction projects, whereas a lot of foundations, charitable foundations, would rather pay for programs and not construction. So I'm making the case for some addition, basically another $15,000 per house to compensate for rising costs of materials in them. And we'll see. That would certainly make it a lot easier because we're not operating with wide margins on this to begin with. So I don't know if that is what kind of the update you're looking for, if there's any particular questions you have, or...
Well, I think the biggest thing, my question was just to make sure it was still on board to build housing. Because me personally, I would like to start with things changing in Stafford County and possibly more stuff coming in here, being able to offer some of these properties up for sale. And if you weren't going to be able to build on them, we'd put them on the list and put them back on the market to sell them and, offer them. But I'm okay with keeping them for you. I mean, as long as you're going to build on them. I don't know whether we put a time frame. Do you have it, within the year? Because I know the city...
We have approved grant agreements, yes. I don't know if we just got to find a contractor that will build them.
Right.
I don't know how you will,
We were just waiting for the assessment to be done to actually do the transfer of the property though, correct?
The assessment.
Yeah, you said like with the federal funding, we couldn't transfer
There was a period where we were specifically limited from taking any, I forget what they call it, option limiting action. I don't know, you might know what the legal term is, but basically we could not begin anything that would be construed as construction before they had finalized all of their clearances. I think all of that's been done now, not all that long ago. December is when that, I believe, was complete, but they're wanting us based on our, our revised price estimates they need me to give them an updated cash flow statement before they give us the go-ahead on construction.
So would it be fair to make the assumption that it's going to be, you said you've been working on the first house for a year now, correct?
Well, it's a different thing. That's students building that. And these are not going to be students building this. We're paying a contractor to do it. And, I feel like that's one of the things that I think is an important factor in, choosing a contractor, is that it's somebody that is prepared to operate on the scale of building 10 houses. We don't want this to be something where they're trying to balance 5 different projects with a crew of 3 and, not getting it done for an indefinite period of time. We want to ideally see that it's a contractor that's completed projects before of a similar type. and we're gonna, be paying them in a different way than, the initial project, again, it's architecture, it's not even construction students, it's architecture students that are doing that, and we have to, I think, consider that it's as much an education project as it is a construction project. To me, part of the advantage, though, is that it's kind of given us a gateway to some other funding. Yeah,
Because we were on hold with putting those properties to the, like, deeding them
Right.
over.
That's,
So-
I guess, are we at a point to go ahead and start the process to give them properties to you, so?
when you say start the process, what does that, I mean, is that
Get them out of
more
the land
than
banks name.
signing it over?
Yes.
Is it more than signing it over?
No, I mean, just getting it out of the land banks.
Like a-
Can you do
Properties.
that at a point that I have a signed contract with a contractor?
Okay, that's what I was asking. I mean, where are we at as far as the land bank saying, okay, these are now yours? John's gonna do the paperwork to
We have a
transfer.
contractor that's committed to getting his bid into us by mid-February. I hope that's gonna come in at a price point we can deal with.
So
If
maybe
we get
later
another
this
bid for
month.
a $200,000 house, we're gonna have to figure out something. I don't know if that, we've talked about the idea that, 200,000 is maybe not a good number because that is so far off from our estimates that I don't know how we can exactly manage that, but if it's 130, does it mean we build 4 houses, hit the pause button, build some cash, and then move on, build additional houses? We'll have to take a look at that. A lot of it just really is dependent on getting a good, reliable contractor that can build it at a price that's in the right ballpark.
I guess that was my only thing, was when it was time to go ahead and transfer them over to you. And I guess if everybody's fine with waiting until you get a contractor, I'd be fine with that.
Can you hold property?
Well, I suppose we can, but we don't have unlimited funds we can, but I don't know. This is a land bank for the purpose of holding property, is it?
Yeah, it may be easier, because then we can put deed restrictions on everything. You go through the process of selling it, right?
No.
No, oh, okay.
No, we are not in the process of selling the housing. In fact, it is obligated to be rental housing under the grant agreements.
So you're gonna have to put the property.
Yes, we do not plan on selling it. They will come with restrictions on, there's income parameters that the tenants must meet. It's kind of part of the trade-off of getting grant money,
Who's the landlord?
Stafford County Economic Development.
Maybe we would need 30 days at the point where we do transfer, but I suppose, heck, you could do it now and put a restriction that it be used as a single-family rental property by Stafford County Economic Development, and if it's not within a certain period of time, it reverts back to the land bank. You've got those kinds of options.
Well, I knew you had emailed me today and said that we have to give 30 days.
Yeah, it's just a notice of publication of sale or something. I would just not make something up, but it's not too broad, too descriptive, too lengthy or anything like that. But your concern is property taxes. Would you be subject to property taxation?
In the immediate term, yes, although part of being approved for the home funding was becoming certified as a community housing development organization. It's a new, For economic development here, it's a new certification, I guess. I mean, there's several, they call them CHODOs, Community Housing Development Organization. There's a number of them throughout the state, and in fact, there's 3 others that cover Stafford County as a part of their service territory. But part of the case I made in making this grant application is that even with that coverage, we have never once, ever, ever, ever had any of those CHODOs invest in developing housing here. And so, okay, by getting that certification, it does entitle us to having an exemption from property tax. We do have to go through a process to have that approved, but
I guess from a liability standpoint, if you've got boots on the ground and guys climbing on roofs and that kind of thing, you don't want to be the owner of that property at that point. So,
oh, to build on it, definitely.
Yeah, so
We need to
I
own it
guess-
at that point, but
yeah, when you get to the point where we're at least 30 minutes out from construction, boots on the ground, then you would definitely want to do it. But I think the initial discussion related to these properties were, you needed to know that they were available for purposes of a grant application. Okay.
they want to know that you actually have a place that has, site control, that you have a place to build the project you propose to build. So it was an important part of making application in the first place.
So I guess just when you figure out or find a contractor, give us 30 days before they start doing something that we can start the paperwork to get it signed over to you. That was the biggest thing on those two, is just making sure that that's what's, and when we needed to start on our side of it.
Sure. Okay. I hope we can do it in the next month. No one be more excited than I am. I'm hopeful that it will coincide well too with some industrial development if we're able to get that moving. I'm not dragging my feet because I don't want to make the project work.
I feel that Carolyn's working hard to bring homes to this town. One thing that we could do, Carolyn just said money's tight. One thing we could do is do a better job of preparing these lots. That lot on First needs a lot of work just to start construction.
Yeah, I think when we go in and tear them down, we probably need to make sure dirt gets hauled back in and at least get leveled up somewhat.
Right.
Yep. It'll make everybody's life a lot easier if they're going to build on it.
Well, and we want to make sure these lots are good to go.
Right.
Because some people won't take the time to cut the dirt away from the curb, do things that need to be done.
Yeah.
So,
One more to add. Chad's discussion there, what's the rules on the mowing of the properties after the land bank gets them? Is that city
The
city
city,
deal? Is that the land bank responsibility?
the city has been mowing and maintaining
I know
the
that.
properties.
Is that the way it's going to stand, or?
I'm assuming, I don't know, haven't really discussed it as far as council, whether they want the land bank to take over. We kind of tried to break everything away from the council's control and put it all in a land bank so that we had control of our properties. I don't know if that's,
and there's certainly nothing wrong with the city continuing to do that. If they
Yeah.
can squeeze it in there.
I got Dale and Edgar, you can start edging all those properties too.
so it would probably, if the city can still do it, depending on how many properties we end up with though.
We're getting close to the line of whatever it was between the houses that we have to go mow their yards for, the people that don't mow their yard, and then the city stuff, and then with the land bank acquisitions we've made, wet, I think it's tight getting everything back around. I mean, right? Or is that not the case?
I made a mowing map and see how it goes this.
So maybe it'll be more
I went out
efficient
and,
this
I went
next
out
year.
and tried to help to get a clear view on just some of the time, and so
Okay,
I'm hoping I can help try to make it more efficient and,
that'd be good.
This
But-
is just a general question. I don't see a lot of trailer houses in St. John. There's nothing against the trailer house in town, is there?
The city ordinance does, but that's not that it can't be changed.
Because if we're talking about getting housing quickly, you know, there's nothing wrong with a nice trailer.
No, no.
there's
I
a
mean-
city ordinance
There's something
in the
Sure,
zoning.
something
in the zoning regulations as far as,
Has to be scurried and
Oh, yeah.
has to get certain age, I'm sure.
I don't
it
I
know.
has
talked
to
to a
be,
few
it has to
people.
be a newer style, I believe.
Right.
What they were trying to do is keep all the old ones that were being moved around in town all over the place. And
Yeah.
But if
yeah,
someone wanted to bring in a new one,
Right.
Yeah.
we would have no problem with that, right?
no, I don't have any problem with anybody bringing something in that's gonna look decent into St. John.
And I
You know,
try,
but-
I mean, I try to work with zoning, I mean, I can't obviously bend the zoning rules, but I definitely try to go through everything to make sure that we can try to do what people are wanting to do with new construction and making things look better.
Because Carolyn's doing all she can to get houses built, but that, you know that's a slow process.
Fundamental challenge is that it's hard to build new house. Well, I could even show you K-State's presentation on this. They'll say that on average, we have built, I think, in the last 30 years, on average, 3 houses a year and torn down 12, looking at the county wide. So aside from, I mean, our housing inventory is declining, and it's in increasingly old, deteriorating age too. We aren't continually investing in new housing over the years. But the challenge is the cost of new construction. You know, what is considered moderate income housing in Great Bend or Hutchinson or Mays has a lot of housing built through these programs. What's considered moderate income in that context is still a $200,000 house in a town where the average house value is or countywide, our average house value is around $78,000. So you not only have, you know, the idea of, is it going to get comped, you know, enough to get financing? It's just is probably as much as anything. My perception is people are willing or hesitant to make that kind of investment, unsure of whether they can sell it for what they put into it. I don't know. I think we also probably deal with a cultural kind of difference here that expects housing to cost lower than what you would pay even in Pratt, Great Bend, Hutchinson, Wichita, or whatever for housing. That's my own just observation of it. So I don't know. These are going to rent from $500 to $550, depending on income. And I am sure that some people will feel like that is expensive. But I've also had conversations with people who rent their houses for $300 a month and will say, "Oh yeah, I lose money on it every year," or you know, it's not enough margin to justify keeping up with maintenance or whatever. And I think if you really look at the costs of true home ownership, that this is an affordable alternative in renting when you don't have the risk of, you know, maintenance costs, and you really look at the full costs of insurance and yada yada. We are trying to, even by HUD standards, as low-income housing, it's crazy as it sounds, we could, by their standards, considering something to be affordable for someone making an income of memory serves, right around 43,000. You could charge over $1,000 a month and still be within HUD guidelines, which is completely unrealistic in this environment. So for me, it was a bit of an art, I guess, to try to find the balance between what the programs will allow, what I think is feasible in this environment, and what cash flows.
Do you think you can have these houses rented out right away?
I hope.
I mean, as people want to,
Jamie probably gets this too. I always hear these anecdotes of, school administrators becoming accidental real estate agents every time they hire someone or whatever. I mean, the hardest part will be that we can't just rent these to, anyone. There will be restrictions, and one of them that came with the Federal Home Loan Bank funding. But again, we've kind of bundled 3 different programs into one housing program. So this could apply to any of the 10 houses, but 5 of them need to be for what they consider to be elderly, which is 55 and older. but no, then they consider it, senior housing. And so it won't be that it will not necessarily meet the need of everyone looking for rental housing. But in my mind, you know what, it may not be for everyone, as long as it's for the right 3 people in town. It has met a need and is some level of progress, I hope. And eventually, it'll be a while. I also look at this like planting trees that somebody will have the shade of someday. The restrictions will eventually go away in 15 and 20 years on the two programs. So eventually, they can be managed. However, one sees fit without. So, I get some of the anecdotes that I've had over the course of time. In fact, we've had these house plans out front that when the students were doing their architecture project, they were collecting opinions from the target that they were looking to design for. And I had one young man in particular. So this person was married with a baby, and they were looking to move to this area from outside of the county, but we're natives of this county. And of course, limited options for buying or renting either one. And I said, we don't have this available now, but since we're working on it, I'm just gonna ask you about what you think of these. And we looked at the drawings out front. And I asked him, do you like them, or what do you like and not like? Well, he didn't like that they looked more contemporary. He was more interested in a ranch style and, yada, yada, yada. Wasn't interested in financing one of them himself to buy. But I asked him, well, would you rent something like that? And it was an unhesitating, well, sure, yeah, I would. So I almost look at it too in terms of they may not be somebody's dream home, but they might fill a need for rental housing. Hope. So I don't know. We are going through the process of getting our applications in order that meet the requirements of these different funders. So I'd like to start processing people as pre-approved and on a waiting list, so that when they are open, hopefully we won't have vacancy. So if you know of people that are good candidates, send them my way. I mean, I almost wonder too if we might find that there's a niche for older people that are ready to downsize and have the maintenance on somebody else. So it might be that someone moves out of housing that's already here and frees it up for the family that doesn't necessarily meet the income restrictions of this rental program, but we still maybe made a house available for a working family.
If you have a application or like the restrictions and want to drop it by or email to me, because I could probably say I get asked at least once or twice a week for houses for sale or rent. So, there's a huge need. And your seeds are being planted, because we've had progress. I feel like we've had a lot of progress, especially in the last 2 years. And I don't think I have my blinders on. I think good things are happening, and that's a lot of you sitting here in the room, so.
If you guys want to discuss any of the other properties or anything like that, I mean, you guys got that list there. Any questions where some of them are? Or John, do we need to do something with that one that we sold?
206 South Pearl.
Yep.
I think Jamie's gonna notify the courthouse that it's changed hands.
Okay.
So
Because that one really needs to come off of our list, because we did sell that, didn't we?
the property transferred ownership, you handed him the deed that was as far as you needed to go. My only concern is the county's aware that they can tax it, which may not be it.
Pretty sure I told them
And that's right now, that 19,225.18 is what's in the land bank. And Jamie's gonna check, hopefully tomorrow. I think the city budgets $10,000 every year for the land bank. So if that's the case, she's just gotta figure out what we gotta do to get it from city, which I think it'd probably just be right to check the land bank. So we'd have some additional funds, another 10,000 in there. I do know there is going to be a tax auction this year, and there are some properties in St. John on it. Unless they get redeemed prior to that, but some of them are, from
On
what
the
I'm
list.
hearing, are rather high property taxes, so I don't. And there would be some properties that need cleaned up.
When is auction, do you know when auction is?
It hasn't been set yet. They're still doing all the legal paperwork, notifications and all of that, the last I heard.
it hasn't been published yet, has it?
No. No. I would imagine they were shooting for mid to late March to have the auction. So,
We can just have another meeting to discuss if we want to obtain any of that.
yeah.
Marshall, is there anybody that comes through the city that asks anything about property that they can build a house on? Is there very many people?
You know, I've had quite a few people that have contacted me in the past wanting to know what properties the land bank did own. I do know that one lady, she ended up buying a house, but she was looking at properties to build on. And I know there's a couple other people that have just entertaining, they're looking at possibly building in St. John and wanting to know what properties we had available or other properties that were for sale on the market.
You know, it might not be a bad idea to get a nice list put together, maybe Jamie could hand out to somebody, or maybe you can put it in city.
It's
Building
gonna
it.
be on the website. Bevan and I actually just redesigned the city's website, and I'm running into some releasing of domain issues, so as soon as that's kicked up, it's gonna be more visible.
What's worth, we're doing some revamping to the economic development website too, with the intent of posting more of that current community information, whether it be job postings or real estate that's available. We'd be happy to also, I mean, maybe more places, capture more attention. I don't know. We're glad to host it too if you have.
That I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like listing the lot. Like, would it hurt? Would it?
I don't think it would, no.
My house is on Zillow. It hasn't been for sale for 9 years, so
Oh,
I don't know who's in charge of Zillow.
If we have a lot, are we putting a price on and selling it, or are we just if people build on it, are we gonna give it to them, or are we charging them for?
I think
what
the
we
last one we sold for
300.
300 or 350, and that was just to kind of cover some of the expenses the city incurred with the, you know, transferring deeds and stuff like that. You know, I guess the city's intention was that if we got people willing to come in and build, we want to make it as affordable as possible, you know? Because if it goes back on the tax roll, the county gets money, and if they're building, the city's gonna get utilities. And so that was the whole plan of it, was trying to keep it as cheap as possible, so someone wasn't having to spend $10,000 for a lot to build a house on.
I think the land bank, you know what, I think our goal was is to get them in, get them cleaned up, and get them back on the tax roll. And that's right, is that kind of what we're thinking?
Yeah.
Because if you take them off the tax roll forever,
Of
well,
the deeds?
you're not
Then you
doing
have
anybody
nothing.
any.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I was.
Did we sell both of them for that money?
I would have to go back and double
I don't
check. That's what I was
remember.
just looking on, I have a file for each one, but I don't have the like I don't have the receipt.
I would say 206 and 917 were both $300.
I think it was $300, yeah.
That's the reason I was bringing it up, we need to get them advertised, if we
Right.
never get them to roll, well,
And that's why I wanted Carolyn here to make sure, you know, because I'd said something to Jamie about getting our properties advertised for sale, you know, and have it out there for people. That's the only way you're gonna do it. I mean, that's the easiest way.
and for my own clarification, these don't have to have houses built, you could build a shed somewhere on one of them, couldn't you?
Yep.
I'm all
And,
for getting anything that's got anything tax value and get it back on a tax roll.
you know, the 206 South Pearl, when we done that, that was just because the owner owned the house next to it and wanted a bigger yard. It don't matter whether they build on it, because, I mean, the county's still gonna get some taxes out of it. Yeah, I'd prefer some of these be built on, but, you know, to generate a little bit of revenue for the city as well. You know, if somebody wants to put a building on one, I'm all for that too.
You know, it might be a good idea when you list this property, to make a summary of how far it is to the utilities as far as gas, electric, sewer, if there's any sewer on the property, or if there's
Right.
water on the property, or
Which
got a
most
well
of
on the
them,
property, or whatever, you know?
I think probably all of them
All of them that we have should.
should have water and sewer on there at some point, I mean, somewhere.
Yeah, I'm guessing, we all know that, but.
Right, they may not,
They may
yeah.
not.
Yeah, it may not hurt to have that listed on there too.
Contractors in varying degrees have asked me, okay, how many feet though? Is it 100 feet or is it 25 feet? You know, some of that you don't know until you actually get out there and
Right.
measure it.
Anything else?
We need to ask people for more money, or we're gonna wait and see what comes up?
You got people that want to donate more money to help clean up properties?
Yeah,
I kind of slowed down when
Yeah.
COVID come around.
I think we all did.
Yeah, I know you guys got quite a few donations, so.
I'm just waiting on number 1 to be tore down.
Number one,
401
401, okay.
East 4th.
Waiting on what?
The city's in the process of tearing down at least 3.
Well, yeah.
Related to city ordinances.
The house on the corner on 4th
Oh,
Street.
gotcha.
And then me and Jamie met with another individual on North Exchange.
Exchange.
And they're looking at donating the property to the land bank. It does have a house on it. And I was in the house, it's not salvageable.
I actually made out a map and kind of color coded it and did a bunch of measurements on the map for them and sent it to them, so hopefully we'll be hearing something from them.
They wanted to keep part of the property, but then it's a corner lot. They can't actually build where they think they can because of zoning regulations. And that was a holdup on him signing it over, was that one empty lot that.
808.
808.
Anybody have anything else?
Nice little house if it wouldn't have had a,
So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn land bank.
So moved.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor? Motion carries. Land bank is adjourned.